Hello and welcome to another episode of Everyday Therapy. Christa and I have just had 2 false starts because
I'm banned from doing the starting opening.
You just get a little bit of the giggles.
I get a little bit of the giggles.
And that's okay because...
Is that so wrong?
That is not wrong. And sometimes laughter is the best medicine.
Yeah.
Right? So that goes back to one of our original podcast episodes. So we want to validate that it's okay to laugh, and we want to validate you are listening and say thanks for listening. We're going to be talking about today how to get into wise mind. And it's an idea that we do have a wise mind. There's a little bit of a sage, wise old sage in every one of us. Mm-hmm. And how do we get to it? And how do we live in that and kind of make good decisions?
And I told Brett that, so Brett has taught this many, many times. He has been practicing DBT, dialectical behavior therapy, for quite a while. It's part of his everyday therapy practice, right?
I like the way you put that, everyday therapy. Yes.
I didn't even do that on purpose. And so what I told him is I was like, I want you to explain it to me like I've never heard of it before. So,
okay,
your challenge, should you choose to accept it.
That would have been great to have some bumper music right there, the Mission Impossible.
Well, you can whistle.
I can whistle, yes. And, I will say this. I don't know. I hope some of the other listeners did realize this, but I was speaking to Doug Foote, our new COO here at Nystrom.
Yes.
And I think it was him who could actually tell when I was whistling and snapping.
Yes. Yep.
He could tell that you were starting to get a little bit annoyed. And I loved that. And what does it mean that I enjoyed annoying you with that so much? But it was...
We need to do...
Right now, I just want to break out into it. So, but no, I'm going to get into a wise-minded.
We need to do a whole other episode about about that dynamic, the snapping, the whistling, the irritation, your enjoyment.
Yes, yes, my enjoyment of that. But we're going to get into wise mind here first.
Well, this will help me because the next time you're snapping and you refuse to stop snapping, I can get into wise mind.
Yes.
And deal with it better.
What a great
transition.
I don't
have to get irritable.
That was a wonderful transition.
You're welcome.
Thank you. All right. So, we're talking about really kind of this is that overarching idea within DBT of mindfulness. I really talk about DBT. It seems very complex in a lot of ways it is. And DBT therapists, we feel like we've never learned anything. When I don't know anything. I still have so much to learn. And yet some of it is really, really simple. So I'm going to first simplify this because you asked.
Yep.
And I think this really captures of what therapy is about too. Therapy is really about change. And people come in for change, but they really don't want it. Well, they don't know how or they don't want it. Otherwise, we would have done it already.
Oh, that's a good point.
And so what's essentially a real basic process of change in therapy? I would say this. It's developing awareness, then acceptance, and then adjustments. And so you might notice where people are trying to make adjustments in their life, but they're not really aware.
Ooh, I like that.
Of what's going on. Okay. And they're so busy judging themselves that it's hard to really make changes.
So
as you've heard of ready, fire, aim.
Yeah.
It's sort of like I'm trying to make adjustments and apply solutions when I haven't even defined or am aware of what the problem is. Mm-hmm. So I like to say it's like 3 A words, right?
Yeah.
Awareness, acceptance, adjustments. And so the word that we use in DBT for awareness is mindful. We just want to be aware. We want to be mindful. And so that's what we're talking about in kind of a broader context here.
I like it.
So we want to be mindful of that we have 3 different states of mind.
Okay.
That we can all really engage in, and yet some of us are going to be more partial or defaulting to one over another.
Okay.
So with that, let's start with maybe the first state of mind.
Okay.
And the first state of mind we'll talk about is emotion mind.
Okay.
That's one I think a lot of us can relate to. Mm-hmm. And just think of what comes to mind when you think of emotion mind.
Like somebody's snapping and they won't stop.
Yeah, it sends you into emotion mind a little bit. Yes.
Right. But
oh, gosh, I have such an urge to do that right now. Just admitting that. Okay, I won't.
Be skillful, be mindful.
Yes.
No, but to be honest, like, I guess when I think of emotion mind, like for myself, like reacting to something, becoming irritated, becoming offended, becoming,
Excellent.
Right. And being like, oh my goodness, like.
And when you say reacting to something, what would that reaction look like, for instance?
Well, yeah, there would probably be an observable emotion or feeling attached to it, right?
Like what? Can you
like
think of
anger?
One? Okay.
Frustration. I mean, I guess those are similar things.
Yes.
Happiness, even.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, you could have a joyful reaction to something.
Just notice where you went initially, because I think we all do.
I absolutely did. It took me a second to realize, like, it can be good emotions.
It can. We can have an emotional reaction that is happy.
Yeah.
That's joyful.
Aw.
We have it all the time. But I wanted to just highlight it because this is very typical when we think about emotion mind, and especially for people who are more prone to being an emotion mind, they tend to think of it in this negative, pejorative manner. That there's something wrong with me because I'm always being told I need to just calm down.
Okay.
You need to relax. You're too emotional, and yet I like how you were mindful and like, hey, wait a second, there can be really happy responses. And so people like you like to sing. You like to sing, and that's a happy emotion that might lead you into
all right, I'll sing.
Could you?
No.
Oh,
maybe someday.
You keep promising.
Yes, exactly.
Over-promising, under-delivering. Hey, that could put somebody into high emotion mind, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But it can be positive things. It can be singing. It can be a great song. I love sports. And so watching sports, people have they can have negative and they can have positive.
You see it all. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's emotion mind. But it's really fun to just notice how we tend to think of that in this negative, pejorative. And emotions aren't positive or negative necessarily. They just are. They're like signals. They're messengers. Okay. And so what we like to do is talk about, okay, what are some of the things that are effective? We don't ask what's positive and negative about emotion mind.
I like that. Okay.
We ask what's effective about it, and then what's not so effective about it.
Wow. Okay. I'm still processing that because I'm so used to labeling emotions as positive or negative, right? But effective is like, is it having the intended, like, is it serving the purpose that I want it to?
Yeah.
Is that, I mean, more or less?
Because if it's not effective, I can just notice that and pivot from it.
Okay.
Versus if I think it's wrong, now suddenly there's a lot of shame that's attached to that.
Okay.
And so I can be living in shame.
Right.
Whereas if it's, this just isn't real effective for me.
Yep.
There isn't the shame.
Okay, so how many of you have been in this situation? You get some information, you're like at work, you get an email, and you have a reaction of anger or even confusion. And for me, my first instinct is to fire off a response sometimes, right? Yep. And sometimes I might kind of have an edge if I'm angry. So is that effective?
Is that effective?
Because at first I was like, well, that's bad. I shouldn't do that, right? Nice. So then I was shooting on myself, right?
Yes.
But instead it's like, well, I could do that. That's okay. Yes. It's just maybe not going to be effective because who knows what the person on the other end of that is going to... Right. It's just like, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, you change the should to a could.
Could.
And a lot of pressure's taken off of you right away.
Right. Because it's like, am I going to get what I want or my intended outcome if I'm responding in that state?
Right. So let's think of it pivoting from right or wrong, good or bad about emotions.
Yep.
What makes being in higher emotion mind, where maybe emotions are in the front seat, what can be effective, what can be ineffective about that?
With emotions being in the front seat?
Right.
Okay, so effective for me is like it conveys how much I care about something. Yes. It conveys meaning, like it's important to me.
Yeah.
So if I have more emotion, it's like it's showing like this really matters to me, right?
Okay. And people can read that off of you too.
Right. And sometimes it helps me, like especially anger can help me set a boundary because anger is a motivating emotion, right?
Yes.
So those are in terms of effective, right? Ineffective, I might say something I don't really mean.
Yes.
Right? I might come across a little too harsh I might shoot the messenger, so to speak.
Right.
So, yeah, there's pros and cons, or effective and ineffective.
Right. There really are. And so I like what you were saying too, is I can have emotion. It brings a certain energy. People can read that, and that's wonderful. Do you ever have a conversation with somebody where you don't know if they're really even listening, if they're tracking, and you just kind of get this blank stare?
Yes.
And you're trying to read them. And
you're like, hello?
Yeah, that's just what I was going to say. Are
Anybody
you
in there?
Right. And so there's no energy that's reciprocating, and you're kind of left like you can't connect with the person. So emotions help us to connect with other people too.
There you go. Yes. And actually, I thought you were going to say, have you ever been talking to someone and they're passionate about something? So like maybe to the point where they seem angry. And that can, like you said, show you what's important to them and also help you connect with them.
Right. Or listening to a public speaker where someone's passionate versus somebody who doesn't have much emotion when they're doing public speaking. Those people are really hard to listen to. So there are some really effective things. It really helps us. It gives us energy. It empowers us to do things. It motivates us. It helps us to connect with other people.
Right.
We like to be around people who are happy. Right?
Yeah, sure do.
We generally do. And so those are really effective things. And I think you highlighted some of the ineffective things, is that sometimes it's my emotions are so much in the front seat that it's clouding my ability to see things accurately.
Right.
And we're not saying that the emotion is bad. The intensity of the emotion sometimes is what makes it problematic.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I got to bring the emotional intensity down. It's not that, like, anger is a good example. People, have you ever heard somebody say, I got a terrible temper? Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Or they'll be like, so-and-so has anger issues.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I love talking to clients and saying, well, you sound a little angry. Oh, no.
I know.
No, I'm not angry.
I know.
Right. There's this aversion to anger, like it's bad, it's wrong, it's sinful or something. And so, yeah. And it's not that anger's wrong or bad. And I tell people who say, I've got a bad temper, I say, I've never met anybody with a good one.
I love that response. I mean,
it's just, there's this shame with anger.
Yes.
And this need to apologize for anger.
Yes.
And I think it's because it's not that anger is the problem. It's just the intensity of it becomes problematic for us.
Right. We could actually, this is a side note, we could do a whole thing on anger. And I'm sure we have.
I don't know if we ever have.
I love talking about anger because it's actually just information. And that's what I tell people is, like, we've not been taught what anger is, why it's there, and what it does. And that's why we're all like, oh, I shouldn't be angry.
I shouldn't be angry. Yes. And so notice how that's the negative judgment we have towards anger. And it's I think it's because what we've seen with anger, we've seen experiences of anger that have been destructive pervasively. And so we see it as wrong and bad and to be avoided. And then what do? We just suppress.
That's right.
Which kind of leads to suppression, leads to explosion.
Yeah.
And now I'm angry, and now the intensity of that's so high that it's not effective.
Right.
So yeah, let's talk about anger sometime for sure. And just for now, it's good to highlight emotion mind. If you are more emotionally driven and characterized by higher emotions, it doesn't mean you're bad.
Nope.
And so it means that there are some great, really effective things about that. There are some things that are not as effective about that. And don't define yourself by either one of those. Because I don't want to define myself solely as bad because I have ineffective things about being in high emotion mind. I also don't want to just say, well, I'm great because I've got all these wonderful emotions. It's a balance.
Yep.
We need to understand that. And that leads us to the next
state of mind.
Okay. Because we need people to balance us out. And that other state is the one that balances out emotion mind, and that's reasonable mind.
Okay. Meet Mark.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm like, this is what I associate, and this is a judgment with, like, the robot. I am a robot.
Right. So notice there's a negative connotation with that too. Like, those people don't have emotions. They're no fun, and they're aloof. Right.
Right.
They're cold, and so we we also can, I'll put you on the spot a little bit. What's another way to look at the people who are more reasonable minded, where reason and logic is really in the front seat and emotions are more kind of in the back seat, maybe even in the trunk. So,
locked away. Yeah. What's effective?
What's effective about that?
Oh, well, the first thing that comes to mind is just level-headed. Like, able to look at things more objectively, able to look at things calm. Like, I just picture, like, kind of like, what's the word? Unflappable in a way. Like, you're not ruffled too easily because you're just looking at it like facts and logic. Right? Yes. So, I get the sense it's just more chill.
More chill. And like, chill is good.
Chill is very good.
Chill is great. It kind of has a stabilizing effect, kind of an anchoring effect. You know, like my oldest son, Zach, I admire him so much because he is very much an anchor. He has a peace about him that's very stable. He's got a ton of wisdom. I always say, when I want to grow up, I want to be like my son Zach, because his wisdom is really good, and you can see people that are more high emotion mind, when they're around people like that, it has a stabilizing, peaceful effect.
So true.
Yeah, and so again, we need to be thinking about ourselves, if we're reasonable mind or emotion mind, like dialectically, a balance of there's some good things and there's some things that are not as effective about this. So what's effective? Yeah, go ahead.
I have a question. I'm raising my hand
up there, ma'am. Yes.
Teacher, so we have our 2 so far, and I know there's still one more for another state of mind. But my question is, do we each have kind of our default state of mind?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, like I said, with my son, he's more reasonable minded.
Okay, but that's not based on what's going on. That's just his personality, or like that's
how he's wired.
Okay.
Right? And some people are more on the emotion side, and on the emotion is going to be in the front seat. So thank you. That's a great clarifying statement. You know, and we know studies do tend to show we marry our opposites, and so all the more need to really prioritize. Maybe if someone's different from us, prioritize it. Yeah, there's some great strengths to that.
Sure.
Because I think we tend to be attracted to that at first, because opposites attract, and then over time we become annoyed by it, or we forget like what's helpful about that. So, and then we just focus on the negative. When whether we do that with other people, or we could just do that with ourselves too, and only see ourselves in the negative. Like I can't tell you how many introverts I've met over the years who kind of apologize for being introverted. Like I wish I was more extroverted. Why?
Right. Good question. Yeah. Why?
So with that, I mean, we're going to be, when this comes up, we're going to be coming up or getting into the heat of tax season. So when this airs, and we want people reason-minded to do our taxes.
Yes, we do.
Right? Because they might...
Shout out to Kevin. Kevin's my tax guy.
Thank you, Kevin.
Kevin, you're the best.
Because, otherwise taxes for a lot of us can put us into emotion mind.
Yes.
And so we want people to help with tasks that are logical, that require level-headedness, being very objective. Okay. So there's a balance, and it's okay. We're going to be much more than the other. We're going to lean more
towards the other one. We had talked about the heartstrongs in another episode.
Yes.
That's an old Sesame Street sketch about this family that's just takes everything. Everything's just so like, oh my goodness.
Tons of emotion.
So that to me is a great example of more of the emotion mind.
Yes.
And I think that's more of where I'm at. What about you? Just in terms of your personality.
I think I lean more on the emotion side.
Right.
Yeah. I wouldn't say I'm reason-minded.
Yeah.
Wouldn't say I'm real high emotion either.
No, that's the thing. And I think maybe this is a good point to just point out that you can become more of one, right? Like using the skills and using this stuff.
Whoa, what a great segue.
You default to one, but that doesn't mean you can't come towards the center.
Exactly. And that center is a balance of both. And that's what we call wise-minded, right?
There it is.
So I want to be making wise decisions. Mm-hmm. So sometimes there are decisions we make we make them purely on emotion.
Right.
And not a lot of reason.
Right.
And then we have a lot of regret. And sometimes we can make or fail to even make a decision solely based on logic.
Right.
And reason without any emotion.
Yep.
And then we can regret that too, because we might miss out on something. Mm-hmm. So it's not that one is better than the other. We're trying to avoid those judgment kind of ways of looking at it.
True.
And it's having a balance. How do I tap into my reason-minded and my emotion-minded state?
Yeah.
And so I like to think of it as kind of like a teeter-totter, on those playgrounds. And is that part in the middle? That's like the fulcrum, right? Mm-hmm. And so that is wise mind. Wise mind is sort of that in the middle. And like if you were to have a word to describe that fulcrum, it would be the word and.
I love it.
The favorite word of DBT is the and. So it's on one side of the teeter-totter, you have emotion.
Yeah.
And on the other side, you have reason. And so we're going to tap into both so that both are balanced and have input. So I make a decision that's wise-minded.
Nice.
It is nice.
Yeah.
Super nice when we can do that.
I even love that image because you're not having to eliminate one or the other.
Right.
Right? To get into wise mind or to utilize wise mind.
Precisely.
And.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's kind of that image for us to think of the teeter-totter. Now, the good news is this. Marshall Linehan, who founded DBT, would say that every one of us has wise mind within us.
Ooh, I like that.
And it is very empowering, and it's very true. Some people might object and say, no, you don't know me.
Not me, Brett. Not me.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I would say, well, did you get out of bed this morning? I mean, that was a wise-minded decision, probably.
Yeah.
Because emotion mind might be saying, forget it, I am not getting up this morning.
That's what mine tells me every day. Me and the snooze.
Yes. We make wise-minded decisions all the time. And we know when we're in a wise-minded place because when we make that decision from a wise-minded place, when we get input from reason and we get input from emotion, I'm at a sense of peace. Like, yeah, this is the right thing. I really believe this is the right thing to do.
Right.
It doesn't mean I like it.
Yep.
It just, so for instance, I think of having to do homework. Mm-hmm. I actually, believe it or not, much to my own surprise, made some wise-minded decisions about homework. And instead of going out and doing something fun, I kind of weighed emotion and reason and said, yeah, I probably need to stay in and study. Now, I wasn't thrilled about it, and I had a sense of peace about it at the same time. Good. That's how we know when we're in a wise-minded place. We're like,
I like that you said it that way, because you said I wasn't thrilled about it.
Yes.
And I knew it was what I needed to do.
Yes.
And I felt good about it. Yeah.
Wise mind, another way to think about it is the experience when we're free of that conflict.
Okay.
Like, not thrilled about it, but I don't have any conflict about it anymore.
Okay.
So we all have this, and that's something we want to be conscious of. And now the question is,
how?
Yeah. What do I do to get to that place? How do I do that? Mm-hmm. So I don't have the timer in front of me. I don't know if we need to push this into another one.
We're at 24 minutes.
Okay. So let's jump into another episode and talk about the what skills and the how skills to get into this place. Okay. Because it's nuanced and it might sound complicated and yet it's so helpful. That might require a little extra time. Yeah.
Okay. Well, here's a teaser.
Yes.
Can this help me with my ongoing battle with the snooze button?
That's a really good question.
Can wise mind because you had used the example of homework, and I'm like, you didn't really want to do it, but you also knew you want, so anyway.
Well, it sounds like you're making wise-minded decisions.
Okay.
Takes you a little bit to get there.
Yeah. To get up, you mean?
Right. Because you get up. And now you might struggle with it.
I do struggle with it.
And so then, I think a lot of us can relate to that. So the question I think is, do we judge ourselves for that?
I do.
Yeah. Is that effective?
Well, it hasn't helped me to solve the problem yet.
Okay. Well, I don't know. You're getting up.
Right, I'm getting up. You're right. I think it's more like I have so many things I want to do in the morning.
Yeah.
And it's my chance to do them like before work, like exercise, for example.
Okay.
And then I'm like annoyed at myself that I didn't use that time.
Okay. Well, this is great because we can tie it back to what we talked about at the beginning.
Okay.
Is acceptance, right? We said really therapy in a very simplistic sense is awareness or mindfulness, acceptance, and then adjustments.
Okay.
And so it's hard to make an adjustment if I haven't accepted that, yeah, this is how I roll.
Right.
And I'm so glad you brought that up because I think that's such a simplistic, very real kind of thing we all do.
Yes.
Like I have shame because I should not be hitting the snooze. I should not be eating this again. I should not be doing this. And as long as we are there, we are not accepting reality. And so we're still fighting with reality. So how can I change reality if I'm still fighting with it? And the reality is this is how I roll.
Oh, that is such a good point. Because even the statement, like, I shouldn't hit the snooze is like, still, I'm not accepting it. Basically, you're saying like by saying I shouldn't be doing this, I'm still fighting with it.
Right. And so what's a different way? Like I shouldn't be hitting the snooze. Notice the lack of acceptance there of like, hey, this is how I roll. So instead of saying I should not hit the snooze, what's a different way to talk to yourself without making a should statement or a judgment about yourself?
Well, I mean, even something as simple as like, I am hitting the snooze.
Okay.
Like I do hit the snooze button in the morning several times.
Several times. No judgment there. Yes.
It's just a fact.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a fact.
It's a fact.
It's not a judgment. It's an observable fact. Or how about this? Instead of I should not hit the snooze so much, maybe say, this is hard for me.
That's true. It's
true. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's still more in reality.
It is. And we can validate that that's hard.
Yes. No.
Is there a little resistance to accepting that?
No. Well, yeah. I mean, it's like, it is so hard. Yeah. But you're right.
Thank you. But this is so beautiful because it does capture, I think, in therapy, why therapy is so hard.
Right.
Because we do not accept ourselves. Who was it that wrote People of the Lie? I forgot his name. Old book of like the 70s, I think. He was a psychologist, but he said, this is back when people were in hospitals. He said, he had all his patients in the hospital. He said, if all my patients could, how did he put it? Forgive themselves and live in grace.
Oh my goodness.
Over half of them could leave tomorrow.
What?
Right.
Wow.
And so, but notice that this really captures, we get stuck.
Yeah.
No, I have to beat myself up. This isn't right. This is not acceptable. I shouldn't be. Yes.
If I accept it, I'll never change it.
Yes. So we want to be mindful that, okay, I'm maybe in a more emotional state.
Okay.
Because I'm shooting on myself.
Right.
And so, okay, first I'm mindful. I tend to go there. Now I can accept this and say, yeah, this is hard for me. It might always be hard for me. I don't know.
Okay.
Now I can start to move towards some adjustments and some skills and some behavioral changes.
Okay.
But I can't do that if I'm still fighting
and judging
with reality. So think about the 12-step program too.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, totally. Step
people
1.
Try to, we're talking really kind of step 1 and 2, but people go into, no, I'm going to stop drinking when they're not mindful of the fact that they can't stop drinking.
And this is going to sound really flippant, but I just thought like we admitted we were powerless over the snooze button and that our lives had become unmanageable.
There we go.
And again, I'm not making a joke, but like that's the first step of the 12-step programs.
That is the first step. Mindful awareness.
We were powerless.
And accepting that. That's how I am.
Wow.
Can you imagine like all these people who have been helped through like 12-step programs?
Oh, so many.
If they said, I'm powerless over this and I suck.
Oh,
I mean, like, if they never move from acknowledgement or awareness to acceptance, they're not going to get anywhere.
Yep.
So, I'm so glad you brought this up as kind of a teaser.
Oh,
Such
good.
a great example for all of us, myself included. I'm so adept at being critical of myself. And
it's easier to stay there instead of like moving on.
Yeah, it's funny we were talking about forgiveness because at my kind of like a Bible study thing, at my church, we were talking about what would your life be like if you could forgive other people. And like you could just totally release them and forgive them. What would your life be like? And I thought, to be honest, I tend to forgive pretty easily.
Okay.
And I really do. And I'm not saying, ooh, look at me. Because what's hard for me, I thought about that question, not in terms of how would my life be different if I forgave other people? What would my life be like if I could accept forgiveness from people? Because I always feel this need to always perform.
Sure.
Show that, I'm reliable, show that I'm responsible, show that you can trust me. What would my life be like if I could just accept that? Going back to that 1970s
book
psychologist and that book of, our lives, if we could, and all these adjustments we want to make in our lives, if we could just start with mindful awareness. Yes, this is hard.
Yep.
And then move to acceptance that, it's how I roll. This is who I am.
Yep.
I may not like it, and I have to accept it.
Yep.
Hey, now the table is set.
Yep.
To actually go and make some adjustments.
I love it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So thanks for bringing this up. So this is how we get into, not how we get into wise mind, but this is what wise mind is, essentially. It's becoming mindfully aware that, I'm kind of emotion-minded or I'm reason-minded, and I don't have a good balance of that. And then accepting that and saying, that's kind of how I roll. I want to be more balanced in how I think about myself. Then I can kind of get input from both reason and emotion, get into a wise-minded place, be without conflict, make a decision, and move forward. So how do we get there? What do we do and how do we get there is what we'll talk about next time.
Perfect. I can't wait.
All right.
All right.
Thank you as always for listening, and please be sure to leave us a review. While this podcast can't be a replacement for therapy, we hope you enjoyed our discussion today and join us again next time. Nystrom & Associates is always available to those who are struggling. If you find yourself in need of support and help, please check us out at nystromcounseling.com.